So this public hearing of the City of Urbana's Community Development Commission is called to order at 6 p.m. on September 24th, 2024. Do you want to do a roll call? Roll call.
Yeah, Cameron, can you do a roll call for us, please?
All right, roll call, September 24th, 2024. Starting at the top of the list, Chris Diana.
Here.
Robert Freeman. Patricia Jones.
Here.
Ann Silvis.
Here.
Deshaun Williams.
Here.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. We have a quorum. Purpose of this public hearing is to receive citizen input regarding the fiscal year 2023-2024 Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report, the CAPER. CAPER is a report that outlines the progress made toward goals listed in the 2023-24 Annual Action Plan and will be submitted to the Department of Housing and Urban Development by September 28th. Notice of this public hearing was printed in a local newspaper, emailed to the media and various social service agencies and citizens, and placed on the City of Urbana's website on September 12, 2024. This hearing will also accept input regarding the fiscal year 2025-29 Consolidated Plan, a 5-year planning framework for the use of Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership Funds. The fiscal year 2025-29 Consolidated Plan will include the 2025-26 Annual Action Plan, which identifies projects to be undertaken in the 2025-26 program year. The Consolidated Plan is in its drafting stage and will be completed in the spring of 2025. Now staff will give a brief presentation on the CAPER Consolidated Plan Annual Action Plan processes.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to start us off by discussing our Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report, otherwise known as CAPER. As we get started, I just want to acknowledge and thank Betsy Barclay, who's sitting behind me currently from Champaign Neighborhood Services. She's going to join me in a bit when we get to the stage of the evening where we discuss the consolidated plan. Then we also have Andrea Rudy and Kevin Garcia with the City of Urbana, who are going to talk about the comprehensive plan, which, believe it or not, is a different thing than the consolidated plan. And we'll talk about all that more in a bit. We have several presentations, so I'll try to be fairly brisk, but if there are any points of clarification or questions, feel free to follow up on anything when we get to the Q&A stage. So the CAPER, as brief as I can describe it, is a report we have to prepare for HUD each year, which goes over our past year of performance for the Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership programs. And it reports progress towards goals that were identified in our annual action plan and consolidated plan. We'll discuss more about the consolidated plan in a bit, but in short, that's our 5-year planning framework for our use of HUD funds. And then our annual action plan is our 1-year increment, which gets into some more specifics as far as specific projects we're going to carry out towards the consolidated plan goals. The CAPER can be a bit difficult to navigate to people who don't have to look at this kind of thing every day, so I just wanted to pull out a few of the key sections. You all have a copy of the CAPER with you in the packet for the public hearing. Quick note on that, an initial draft of the CAPER went out on the 12th. This packet went out on the 19th. There have been some additional changes. Most of that reflects inclusion of some home ARP activities, which we realized hadn't been included in some of the data we were pulling out of our HUD system. So wanted to note that for the public record and make sure those got included in the copy you all had. But moving on, so the CR05 section, that's one of the main sections of the CAPER where we lay out the activities we carried out in the previous year and report them in terms of progress towards the goals that were identified in the annual action plan. The table there gets a little bit messy because it reports goals that were identified in the consolidated plan as well as the annual action plan. Not every consolidated plan goal is carried out every year, so we've tried to indicate what's an activity that wasn't included in the previous year's annual action plan. And then in the CR010, that gets into some details on demographics of beneficiaries of our different programs. And then the CR15 is where we provide a financial breakdown in terms of the amount of funds we had available and what we actually spent. And then the CR20 is the affordable housing section. So there's a bit of overlap with the CR05, but that's talking in terms of some affordable housing metrics specifically. In terms of where we're getting this data from, we use something called the Integrated Disbursement Information System. This is a HUD software that we use for setting up our activities and reporting on them to HUD, as well as drawing down funds when we complete those activities. So that's most of where this information is coming from. There are parts of the CAPER where we speak to things like homeless services and housing authority activities. So some of those things are information we're getting from community partners as well. Here I have a table breaking down the funding that was available for the 23-24 program year, and then how much we actually spent. You can see the year's allocation. That's how much money we were given by HUD at the start of the year, and then next to that, the amount we actually had available. So that would include rollover funds and things like the Home ARP program, which again was a COVID-era stimulus specifically directed at the local homeless population. And then on the right, the amount we actually expended. Looking at this, you can probably notice that we didn't spend all of the money we had available. We'll get into some more details on why that was. In short, it's mostly because we've kind of reserved and committed funds to larger projects that are still in development or in progress as of the end of the previous program year. The CAPER only reports on completed activities, so those activities that are still in progress will be reported on in a future CAPER. Next, we'll move on to what we were able to complete in the prior program year. So as you know, we have a home repair program, which was able to assist 24 homes in the prior program year. Through our community housing development organizations, which are Habitat for Humanity and First Followers currently, we were able to complete work on 9 new affordable units. We were able to assist See You at Home with acquisition of 8 units for use as a transitional housing shelter. We assisted 40 households with tenant-based rental assistance through our partnerships with the Regional Planning Commission and Courage Connection. And then through our public service activities, which would be a combination of things like our neighborhood cleanup event, our youth services program, and then some supportive services for the local homeless population that are funded through Home ARP. We assisted 1,545 individuals. Did want to quickly touch on a few projects that if you look at the CR05, these are projects that were identified in the previous year's annual action plan that show up as either not completed or partially completed, and just wanted to provide some quick context for those. We'd included some activities with the Housing Authority in the annual action plan. Those were not completed at the end of the program year, but those are still things that we're coordinating with the Housing Authority on. We have a planned development for the second phase of Bristol Place in Champaign that's funded with Home, so that's something where it would be an eligible expense in the city of Urbana, the city of Champaign, or unincorporated Champaign County. So we look forward to seeing that come to fruition in the next couple of years. Similarly, rental rehab was something where we'd provided some funds to First Followers to rehabilitate a rental unit that was still in progress at the end of the program year, so will be reported on in a future CAPER. Buildings demolished is an activity we tend to include in our annual action plan as an extension of other code enforcement activities that we fund with the Community Development Block Grant. Were our partners in the Building Safety Division to identify a property that they felt was a good candidate for demolition with CDBG funds, they could refer that to us and we could consider it as an eligible use of funds. We didn't have that come up in this year, but putting it in the action plan gives us the option if it should. And then infrastructure, similar to some of these other circumstances, we have funded a number of sidewalk and lighting projects throughout the community, all still in progress at the end of the program year. So those will be reported in a future CAPER. And then lastly, overnight shelter, that's partially completed. That reflects the 8 units of transitional housing that I referenced previously. We're also expecting to commit funds to the Hope Village Permanent Supportive Housing Development, which you may have heard something about. That's still in development, so will also be reported in future CAPER as progress moves forward on that one. Next, I have some quick slides showing demographics for our programs. Here you can see program beneficiaries broken up by different income levels. Just to explain what those mean really quickly, extremely low income would be anybody whose income is under 30% of the area median income. Low income would be 30 to 50% of the area median income, and then moderate income would be 50 to 80%. Quick note on the home beneficiaries. That does not include beneficiaries of the Home ARP program. Again, that's targeting the local homeless population. That's mostly folks with very little or no source of income, so they're categorized a little bit differently, so they're not reported in this table. But then on this next slide, which gets into race and ethnicity information for program beneficiaries, we do collect that information. So you may notice the home numbers are quite a bit higher on this slide. So just wanted to give some context for that. So that's a quick overview of the prior program in terms of what activities we carried out and who we were able to serve. Hopefully you can see that these programs continue to have a big impact in the community. But as we close out, did want to touch on a few areas where we continue to see some gaps in services. So we are aware that there's an ongoing need for affordable rental construction in particular, and our services, while beneficial, have not really met exactly the scale of need. Part of that is the resources that are available to us. Part of that is partner agency capacity and how much folks are able to take on, but is something we want to continue working on moving forward. We do have a few projects on the horizon, which I mentioned, such as Bristol Place and Hope Village, which should hope to fill some of that gap in the future, but that continues to be something we want to keep thinking about. And then lastly, as you saw, we're still not really at a place where we're spending all of the funds that we have available to us. Part of that is during the COVID era, we had a big influx of additional funds, which is a good problem to have, I suppose, provided that we can continue in coordination with our partners, find eligible uses, and get those funds out into the community. So that's what I have in terms of the CAPER. We can definitely take a break, and I can take any comments or questions regarding the CAPER specifically, and then when we're ready, we can move on to the consolidated plan portion. I also have a link to our community needs survey here, and that would be a great opportunity for any folks in the community to give us input on our past year of performance as well as things moving forward. Yep.
I just had a quick question in regards to the most recent statement that you made about us having an influx of funds that's usable, but we've not been able to use that. Is that just a lack of partnership, companies and things of that nature, or is that just, are we missing something in regards to reaching out to folks and inquiring about that?
Yeah, it's a big question. I think in a lot of those cases, as I mentioned, a large chunk of our unspent funds are things that we're kind of holding in reserve for large projects that are still in development, and definitely for larger new construction projects. That's something where, we might start having conversations very early on in the process. But in terms of, from when we start having those conversations to breaking ground, it can be a long process.
Thank you.
Just a couple of questions, if I might. This is on the CR 05 section. One would just be logistics. Is that all the tables of numbers that start on page 3, is that a spreadsheet within the document where those titles could be repeated on every page, or is that just a captured set of numbers that are in there? I'm just thinking for people reading it, it's...
Yeah, so definitely in terms of what we put out to the public. We can play with the formatting a little bit. Once we submit it to HUD, it kind of has to be in their format. But
Okay.
I agree, it's not super easy to navigate.
You kind of keep flipping back. And my other question is more internal and specifically with regard to the percent complete column. Just exactly what that is, how that's measured. Let's say the top entry on page 4 there. How are we getting to a 47,435% increase?
Right. So
Internal calculations that it's doing? Because I do math the old way, and that's not what that is.
I agree. Some of these numbers are pretty weird. So that number in particular is in reference to public facility and infrastructure activities. And that was a goal that was established during the consolidated plan back in 2020. Honestly, I don't really know where the 100 number came from. That was set up in 2020 before I was in this position. I say this with a lot of sympathy because it's difficult to know exactly the right way to set this up. When we do infrastructure activities, those are calculated as an area benefit where we would look at the population of, for example, a census tract that's likely to benefit from an infrastructure project. So those numbers can be pretty huge. So relative to that 100 that was put in there back in 2020, that's where you get that large disparity between what we're actually reporting when we complete those activities, report the beneficiaries, and then connect it to that consolidated plan goal. So looking forward, situations like this provide us with a lot of good information for how we can set things up in a way that makes more sense and is easier to understand and is easier to track as we set up the next consolidated plan.
Yeah, I only bring that up because whenever you're presenting numbers, people have a tendency to ignore important numbers if they're looking at silly numbers or what they assume to be silly numbers, and they'll sort of bypass it. And especially these, I'm saying, I'm not sure even the mechanics on some of these calculations are running right within the spreadsheet. So just as another thought that it's good to have people be able to look at something and it's simple and they understand why and what's being measured.
Appreciate that feedback. Thank you.
Looks to me like it's just actual as a numerator and expected as a denominator, right? That's how this came about. But I take your point that you could just say, 100% plus or something, and just say, something a little bit simpler to read. But I appreciate the level of detail, though. I mean, it's good to see specific programs and what the expected plan was and what the actual outcome was. In many cases, exceeding its goals. So that's really good.
So Nick, now that we're looking at that spreadsheet, there are some looking at the first one, expected in the strategic plan, the first one, address barriers to affordable housing. So 0 was the expectation. So how is there 0 as an expectation?
So that was an oversight. Tenant-based rental assistance was included as an activity in the narrative section in terms of setting up what's called a goal outcome indicator, where we say this is how many households we're going to do. That wasn't set up in the 23-24 action plan. It may be something we need to go back and correct once HUD looks at this. But we did want to report what we actually did in the year, so that's why it's reported in that kind of odd way.
I was just gonna say, it sounds like you're thinking or expecting as far as just the next, the next duration of plan, you having more of a cleaner slate based off of what you guys have determined rather than what you inherited?
Absolutely. I could talk all night about ways that how this
Yeah.
has been set up. It's been
I
frustrating.
get it. I see the despair in your eyes. So that's what, all right, that makes sense. Appreciate you doing what you were able to do, though. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's always a discussion around what we see and try to understand versus what you're required to submit to HUD. And I don't know if there's any way around that to give us like the executive summary or something where we wouldn't get mired in the silly numbers or the formatting, the things that are difficult for us to understand and use anyway. And I'm thinking even more so for the general public that hasn't really
I
studied
think your
any of this.
presentation was a really good version of that.
Thank
Yeah.
you. And I definitely tried to pull out the key points for things like the presentation. We can definitely, to the extent possible, play around with formatting and things like that in the future. And then I think a big part of it also will be setting up our consolidated plan activities in a way that reporting on them each year is more understandable.
So you talked about the CAPER. Do you want to talk about? the
Sure.
others?
Betsy, do you want to come up and join me? All right, so we're going to move on to the consolidated plan. As I mentioned previously, we're joined this evening by Betsy Barclay from Champaign Neighborhood Services. The reason she's here presenting with me this evening is while CDBG's funds are granted to each municipality separately, home funds are granted to us as a consortium, which consists of the city of Urbana, the city of Champaign, as well as unincorporated parts of Champaign County. So we're doing this project together, so we thought it would be nice to present on this together. All right, so we touched on this a bit in the last presentation, but the consolidated plan is our 5-year planning framework for use of community development block grant and home investment partnership funds. The core components of the consolidated plan are a needs assessment and market analysis. And then from there, we outline our goals and priorities for addressing those needs with our use of HUD funds. Each year of the consolidated plan, we put out an annual action plan. So the consolidated plan itself actually includes the first annual action plan of that 5-year period. And Betsy's going to talk some more about the relationship between those and also eligible uses of program funds.
Yeah, good evening. As Nick has said, the CON plan or consolidated plan is a 5-year plan. And the annual action plan is a 1-year plan. The CON plan, if you think of it like this, the CON plan has a needs assessment and strategic plan portion, and those identify and lay out the overarching goals of our 5-year strategic plan to address community development needs in the communities. The annual action plans lay out the activities that each of the cities will undertake individually to accomplish the goals of the 5-year plan in a given fiscal year. So for each CON plan, there are 5 annual action plans. We're in the final year of this CON plan. So right now we're essentially working in both the current CON plan and the next CON plan, and that we're enacting the activities from the final year of the current CON plan, and we are planning and gathering input and doing all the work of starting the next CON plan. It's important to note that there are 2 types of funding in the CON plan. The Community Development Block Grant Funds, or CDBG funds, and Home Investment Partnership, or HOME funds. Both cities receive CDBG funds directly from the federal government individually. These funds must be spent to benefit low to moderate income residents of the respective cities. Only certain types of activities can be carried out with these funds. Housing rehabilitation can be funded along with other affordable housing activities like relocation, disposition, and acquisition. Blight reduction can include activities like code enforcement, beautification, and safety upgrades. And public facilities might include neighborhood upgrades like sidewalks or street lights. And as you can see, we can only spend 15% of our allotment on public services. And that could include youth programming, homeless services, things of that nature. Okay. Home funds are allocated at the consortium level and can be utilized for projects in Urbana, Champaign, and the unincorporated Champaign County. Unlike CDBG funds, which are more flexible, home funds must be used to create an affordable housing unit. Typically, these funds are used for tenant-based rental assistance, down payment assistance, or aid in the construction of affordable housing. Examples of how the consortium has used home funds in past plans are funding Habitat for Humanity for their home builds and to help with the redevelopment of Bristol Place.
So one of the challenges of putting the consolidated plan together is we plan for our next 5 years of use of HUD funds, but we don't know exactly how much funding we're actually going to have to work with. We find out our CDBG and home allocations annually. Congress sets the federal budget, and then from there, HUD uses a formula to make each community's allocation. Just for reference, and so we have some general idea of how much funding we might have in a given year. I have our current funding amounts for this program year on the screen here, and then it can go up or down a bit in a given year. So this past year, we received just under $400,000 in CDBG funding in Urbana. Champaign has received about $825,000, and then the home consortium as a whole received $612,000 in home funding. I will say that's a particularly low funding amount as far as what we've received in home funding in previous years, but whether that's going to be the trend moving forward is really anyone's guess. So the best we can do, like I said, is try to give ourselves a bit of wiggle room, but look at what we've received in previous years. If we received exactly the same amount each year for the next 5 years, that would come out to about $6 million across the two cities in CDBG and about $3 million in home funds. As Betsy mentioned, these are programs that are federally required to be benefiting low to moderate income households. We wanted to provide some context for what that actually means in Champaign County currently. So the cutoff for a moderate income household is something that varies by household size, but we have those amounts up here on the screen where you can see for a family of 4, for example, 80% of the median family income would be a household income of $84,950. Below that cutoff, we really do serve a pretty wide range through our different programs. As I mentioned, we're going to be doing a community needs assessment for the consolidated plan. We're going to look at a variety of different things for that, from surveys that we're putting out in the community, focus groups we're doing with service providers, as well as looking at things like census and ACS data. Just to contextualize our conversation this evening, I wanted to point to a few key statistics related to housing and community development needs in Champaign County. So first off, we have housing cost burden. That's something that HUD defines as a household spending more than 30% of their monthly income on rent. It's generally agreed in household finance that over that threshold, folks tend to not have enough left over for other things. So currently in Champaign County, 48% of renters would qualify as cost burden. That's based on the most recent census data we could look at. And then 18% of homeowners. So it's a pretty common issue in Champaign County, but is something that's disproportionately affecting renters. And then in terms of what HUD would call severe cost burden, or a household spending more than 50% of their income on housing, it's about 30% of renters. And then as far as home ownership rate, currently about 53% of households in the county own their home. It's actually a bit under half if you look at just Champaign and Urbana. But that is an area where we continue to see some pretty significant racial disparities in the housing market, with just over a quarter of Black households currently owning their home. As far as how that relates to the consolidated plan, one of the things HUD asks us about is progress towards fair housing goals, areas of disproportionate need. So we definitely want to be looking at any of those areas of inequality and be working to address those gaps. And then to contextualize what some of these issues like cost burden might mean in terms of actual dollar amounts, currently median rent for a 2-bedroom unit in the county would be about $1,200. That would translate to an annual income of about $48,000 that would be needed for a household to not fall into that cost burden range that we were discussing on the last slide. And then at the median, homeowners with a mortgage are spending about $1,600 a month, and that would translate to an annual income of about $64,000 that would be needed to afford that without being cost burdened. And then lastly, we have some information from the most recent point in time count. This is something that the Continuum of Service Providers to the Homeless conducts every year to identify the number of homeless individuals in the county. They identified 279 individuals this past January. 42 of those were unsheltered, 152 were in emergency shelters, and 85 were in transitional housing. I will say this is a bit of an uptick from previous years. I think it's an increase of a little over 60 individuals who were identified this year. So definitely a significant problem in the county. A little bit of context for why there may have been an increase this year. The Continuum, who conducts the count, used some more intensive counting methodology, more comprehensive street outreach, as well as some follow-up surveys. So part of it is they were likely more effective at identifying folks. But again, it is a serious problem that we're going to need to continue to work to address. So moving forward, for the remainder of 2024, we're going to continue working on drafting the plan and conducting outreach. Betsy is going to talk more about some of the outreach we have been doing and are continuing to do. In early 2025, we hope to have a draft published. At that point, once we have something more detailed for folks to look at, we will open it up for some additional hearings and a comment period. And then in the spring, we'll be taking it to the local councils. And then after that, we'll have it submitted to HUD by the end of the spring. And I'll hand it off to Betsy, who's going to talk some more about the public input we've been doing.
So we will hold at least 3 public input hearings, including this one. Like Nick said, we like to have one early in the process so we get input before we have drafted the plan, but the other 2 will take place later, and at least one of them will be during our public comment period for adopting the con plan. The draft plan, like he said, will be published in early 2025, and as a part of the input process, we will hold consultations with stakeholders, so our service providers, and we may conduct some focus groups. So what have we done so far? Well, we have the community-wide survey that Nick mentioned in his last presentation, and that's available on the City of Urbana website and on Engage Champaign, which is a website for Champaign residents. We've been distributing postcards with the survey QR code at events in both Champaign and Urbana. Staff from the cities have attended roughly 20 community or neighborhood events, probably about 24 now from when we wrote this. The community events included Juneteenth, CU Days, Champaign's Farmers Market, the Reentry Resource Fair. City of Urbana has attended the Urbana Park District Neighborhood Nights, and Champaign has attended our CNNC events in our targeted neighborhoods. We've also held neighborhood meetings in Champaign, at Centennial High School and Kenwood Elementary, because those are areas we see becoming target areas where there are not neighborhood groups formed. So we're trying to reach out to that area. And you can see photos on this slide of our outreach efforts at the events. We did conduct a public engagement activity where we gave stickers representing $1 million to participants that they then got to budget the money, if you will, and stand in our shoes for a day. And we had about 195 participants with those activities so far. And the top 3 choices were homeless services, youth services, and construction of affordable housing. They want creation of affordable housing. And we've had about 60, a little over 60 responses to our survey. So we'll continue to conduct community outreach, I think, through the beginning of December.
All right, so as Betsy mentioned, we've got our survey available now. There's a QR code for this. We'll also be sending out postcards to some of our target areas. We also do surveys for our annual action plans. We wanted to put a little bit of room between when we're sending out surveys for folks, but those should be going out later this fall. And we definitely appreciate anybody's input, and as well as the commission's input this evening. And then we have our contact information up here as well if anyone wants to reach out to us directly.
I'll say thank you. Thank you guys for the work that you've put in, for sure. I had just 2 quick questions. On the slide, was that, it was 26.6%. Is that Black homeowner? Okay. To follow up with that, like, what are the plans, for like, what's the timeline as far as the plans are concerned for the results of those activities and surveys and whatnot throughout those targeted communities?
So we're expecting to wrap up our first phase of outreach, which would be things like surveys and focus groups, by the end of 2024. And then we would hope to have our draft available, and then we do our next phase of outreach where folks can kind of look at what we produced from that first wave, and then
That's what I'm, so it's just, it'll essentially be another follow-up outreach?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question that's not really related to, so I appreciate your presentation, thank you. I have a general question, which is, do we have a concern about private equity firms turning into landlords and creating worse disparities or more burdensome situations? That's been happening in bigger urban areas, and I don't know if that's an issue here for us. And if it is an issue, what are we doing about it?
Yeah, that's something that I don't have a lot of data on, but would definitely be something we could look into.
I guess one more thing, just to the percentage that you guys had with the home ownership. Have you guys considered involving, or have we considered involving banks, right? Because understanding some of the, from a lending perspective and things like, there's some things that are outside of the scope of, just Black folks being Black folks, or, whatever, redlining and things of that nature. Have we considered involving them in some of the surveys or plans, and things of that nature moving forward?
Yeah, definitely, and I agree. I think access to capital is a big issue there. We do coordinate with local lenders through something called the Community Reinvestment Group. That's where banks who have to meet requirements related to the Community Reinvestment Act and meet certain metrics regarding equitable lending. So we kind of meet with them, discuss different programs that we have available, discuss the services that they have available. We've used home or CDBG funds, I believe you could use for down payment assistance in the past, or maybe just CDBG. I think that would be it. Sorry, it's been a while since we've done a program like that. It would potentially be an eligible use depending on the feedback we get from the community and if it seems to be an identified need.
I will add that we have had, both cities have had down payment assistance programs, and we have not had a lot of response for those. I know Urbana, before Nick was here, did one a few years ago, and they only had a few applicants, and
Really?
Champaign the same. But we do, one of the subrecipients that we work with is Habitat for Humanity, that works heavily on home ownership. So we do help with home ownership that way.
Sure. Thank you.
I think sometimes what's seen there from the real estate standpoint that I'm involved in, down payment assistance is not often the biggest issue involved there. It's more the monthly carrying cost, et cetera, or currently the carrying cost because of the interest rates, et cetera. Down payment assistance would be a lot more useful if there was the flexibility to use that down payment money for buying down interest rates or something like that than it is for actual down payment. So I don't know if such flexibility can be built into it, usually not in those programs, unfortunately. So.
You're saying like for the down payment to have that $2,000 split up into a monthly?
It's often more effective rather than putting 20% down on a house to put 5 to 10%, whatever you can, use the balance of it to buy the interest rate down. And it's actually a better cost of saving, makes it a lot more affordable, but that requires that there be that much flexibility in those funds to be able to use it for something other than just a straight down payment.
So I will say in the survey that we have available, we ask fairly detailed questions about, if folks are interested in becoming homeowners or are homeowners, what issues have they faced as far as like down payments or, ongoing monthly payments, repair costs. So, based on the feedback we get, we'll, sort of be able to take stock and then calibrate our different options as far as responding to the issues folks are actually telling us that they're facing.
Now, do you want to talk about the annual action plan?
So the annual action plan is included in the consolidated plan. As we mentioned, I don't have another presentation, but in general, the annual action plan is going to tie in closely to the consolidated plan. It's just going to get more specific about the actual projects that we're going to carry out in the 25-26 program year.
Are there any questions specifically about that?
It is, I just will add that it is a part of the con plan, the first year annual action plan is. So when we publish our con plans, it will include the annual action plan. So any comments about that should be accepted now or when we publish the drafts.
Else from staff about the? Great.
Thank you.
Hear the details. So is there anyone from the audience who wants to ask questions or provide comment? There's no one here. And you didn't receive anything via email or?
No.
Okay. So thank you for that additional information, and thank you, Betsy, for coming over to Urbana. So seeing that there are no further comments, I now declare the public hearing closed, and we'll move on to our regular meeting of the Community Development Commission. So we'll call to order at 6:45, and we need a roll call.
All right, roll call. Chris Diana,
Here?
Robert Freeman, Patricia Jones,
Here.
Ann Silvas,
Here.
Deshaun Williams.
Here.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. We have a quorum. The first item on our agenda is approval of the previous meeting, and the minutes from that meeting are August 27th, 2024. You got a copy of that in the packet and on the website. Is there a motion?
A motion to approve the minutes from August 27, 2024.
Thank you. Motion from Deshaun. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Patty. There's a motion and a second. Is there a discussion about the minutes from our regular meeting on August 27th?
I like the new format. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none. All in favor of approval of the motion to accept the meeting minutes from August 27th, 2024, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. The ayes have it, and the minutes from our August 27th, 2024 regular meeting have been approved. Are there any additions to the agenda for this evening?
There are not.
None, okay. Is there any public input? There's no one here this evening, but was there anything received as an email or
There was not.
not? Okay. Moving right along to presentations, Imagine Urbana. So Andrea and Kevin?
Good evening. As Andrea is opening that up, I'll take this opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Kevin Garcia. I'm the principal planner with the City of Urbana. I've been here 10 years. This is my first time presenting at the Community Development Commission. So thanks for having us.
Again, thank you for giving us this opportunity. We're excited to be at this stage of the comp plan. I'm Andrea Rudy. I'm Senior Advisor for Integrated Strategy Development, and my main responsibility here at the city is leading the comprehensive plan process, and hopefully we're getting to the finish line thanks to a lot of people and my colleague Kevin here. So first of all, we're going to give you some background. Just I don't know that we've made a presentation here, so this has been a 4-year process, and I'd like to just give you some background to bring you up to speed on just giving you some highlights. So what is the Imagine Urbana Comprehensive Plan? I think this is appropriate since you're talking about plans tonight and trying to differentiate between different plans. So this is our community's vision for what Urbana should look like in the next 20 years. Our last plan was done in 2005, so we're on target to complete our plan for the next 20 years. It articulates overarching goals, which we're calling big ideas in our plan, and then the strategic actions, which we call big moves and little moves, to make the vision a reality. And it serves as our city's primary long-range planning document, guides the future development for the community. So this is the process, and sorry for being so small. Hopefully you can see it on your monitors in front of you. We started the process back in 2020, and we had a little mild hiccup there, COVID, which started right at the same time we were getting ready to launch some of our community engagement activities. So we pivoted and thought of some new ideas to do things. We had a website where people could make comments online since we couldn't be meeting in person. They could put ideas on an idea wall. They could pin places on a map. We had a survey. Then as things started easing up, we started doing outdoor events, pairing with a lot of community events during that time. We also had an SMS survey where we did that in 4 languages, mailed postcards to 21,000 households. All of that was just our leading up to making awareness of the plan. And our goal was to try to reach people that we don't normally hear from. We wanted to hear from all voices in the community. So that's why we did a lot of different methods of outreach to do that. And I'll talk a little bit about the reports that we did along the way. Our second round of community engagement was similar to, it sounds like, what your group did. We called it Balancing Act, and we did an online activity, but then we also went out into the community and did sort of a game board activity where everybody got $100, and we had probably $800 of projects to spend money on, and so the public helped us prioritize. So they found out quickly that you can't do everything you want to do, and just like the city can't with limited resources. So really good public engagement activity. And so then in fact, Nick was a big part of this before he moved to his current role. He helped us crunch data and really do a couple of those reports along the way. So then during this last probably 9 months, we've been taking that data, we came up with, so everything came from that community engagement process. We developed the vision and goals, the values for the city, and then what we're calling the big ideas and the big moves and little moves. And so now we're at the stage where we just completed our community meetings where people could give us feedback on the plan. Again, we sent out postcards to 21,000 households to tell them about that the plan was ready. We wanted to know if we got it right. So that process is just wrapping up as far as the outreach. We still have our online plan so people can comment on that. I hope that you all received that. It's been probably in August, I think we sent it out to all the commissions. So we've got some online input that we're still gathering, and then we're talking to the commissions as well. And then the Plan Commission is reviewing everything now. We've had, I think, 3 public hearings to date. Is that right, Kevin? With the Plan Commission, and we'll continue to have those until we get that to a state where the Plan Commission can then make the recommendation to the council. So we're hoping to wrap up by the end of the year. That's our goal. If not, it'll be early next year, and we'll go through a timeline later on that. So these are the reports we've published to date. One is a 2005 comprehensive plan assessment. We looked at that plan and looked at what worked, what didn't work, what could be done better. And so we have hopefully we learned some lessons from that. Our first community outreach summary was published in October 22. That was that extensive, broad community outreach we did. Even some door-to-door activities were included in that. And so all of those are available online. Examine Urbana, if you have not seen that, I hope every one of our commissions has an opportunity to look at that. It's a very extensive look at where we're at today. In other comprehensive plans, you'll see it called present conditions or existing conditions. But this is much more extensive in that it really gives the background of why we're here, why we are where we are, how we got here. And so it's a very good project. It was done by a colleague, Lily Wilcock, who is no longer with the city, but she did that as a capstone project for her master's in planning, and it was an excellent, excellent thing that hopefully we'll use for many years to come. And then the Balancing Act finding summary, we did that in each ward, so there's information by ward as well as online versus in person. So we just took information and sorted it that way. And then now we've published the comprehensive draft plan. So that's where we are today. And again, we're not at the final draft stage by any means, but we're getting feedback on this plan. So the table of contents, we talk about our vision and values, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Background on how we got to the plan, what the process was, the big ideas, which are our goals, the big moves, little moves, which are our strategic actions, the master map, which Kevin's going to detail that a little bit. He was very active in assembling those plans and getting those put together. We're also going to be tracking progress, so there's metrics in this as well. And then our evaluation and reporting, how we're going to be evaluating ourselves, our success in implementing different of those little moves, and then our reporting structure. We hope to have regular reports to council as well as updating the plan every 5 years. And then the appendices has all the reports in it. It's very extensive. We don't print that very often. It's over 300 pages because it's all the reports, including Examine Urbana, which is 300 pages in itself. It's not meant to really be printed. It's really an online, more of an interactive tool. So just to give you an idea of how everything interrelates, we have 4 big ideas, which we'll talk about in a little bit. We have 11 big moves, which are those action items, or the objectives, and then the little moves are the strategic actions to accomplish those overreaching goals, and then the metrics cross all of those big moves. So our big ideas, and like I said, this is the heart of the Imagine Urbana comprehensive plan. It's the goals for the city's future, what Urbana will look like 20 years from now. So big idea number 1, Urbana is a place for everyone. And we heard that a lot in our community feedback. We really feel like Urbana, is a place for everyone, but that's our vision going forward, is to make sure that we just keep that in mind, and that's as a number one goal. Urbana is both financially and environmentally resilient. Urbana is a city of connected neighborhoods, and Urbana embraces its cultural vibrancy and culture. So these big ideas, these goals came out of our community engagement and what people told us that were important to them. So the big moves, we have 11 of these, and I'm not going to go into all of these in detail, but I've highlighted 3 that I think are most impactful for this group and the ones that you'll probably be most involved in. So obviously the first one, which is develop a plan to address Urbana's diverse housing needs, we really feel like that's what this group is very concerned with and would like to see what's going to develop there. Big move number 2, revising our zoning ordinance to align with Imagine Urbana. This has been something that we've been talking about the last few years, is doing really a total rewrite of our zoning ordinance, and so this will be a great time to do that. Again, this is another one that I feel like impacts this group, creating neighborhood plans to address the individual needs of individual areas. Strengthen downtown Urbana's role as the economic driver of the city. Expand Urbana's arts and culture program. Make walkability the default setting. Promote incremental development. Invest in infrastructure that makes sense financially and is environmentally resilient. Increase Urbana's economic vibrancy. And then this is another one that I thought we'd talk a little bit more about tonight, is encourage and support community health, safety, and well-being. And then advance a clean and green community. So these are our big moves, and then each one of those has corresponding little moves, which are the steps, the action items that we will do to make these happen. So I'm going to go a little bit into more detail on big move number 1, which is develop a plan to address Urbana's diverse housing needs. And so there's several little moves that compromise. I'm not going to go through all of those, but you have the handouts in front of you to see what the individual items are. I know Nick and Braden, Cameron, this was a little bit before you joined the team, but we're very instrumental in coming up with the different big moves and little moves that related to housing. So the first thing, now I won't say first, but one of the most important things we feel is conducting a comprehensive study of the housing market, analyzing the existing housing supply, what are the workforce trends, future demand, affordability levels, and land use. So it's not just about affordable housing, it's about all types of housing. And it's something that we know there's a lot of studies out there, but we need to consolidate that and really feel like, or really see where we are at today to know exactly where resources are needed and where they can best be used. And all of the other little moves kind of tie into that housing market study, using that going forward to really give us more information and more plans. So big move number 3, create neighborhood plans to address the needs of individual areas. We've had some feedback on this one from the Plan Commission about maybe talking more about small area plans. And Kevin, do you want to just address that a little bit?
Sure. Well, talking about neighborhood plans and specifically, that doesn't include sort of, I guess, areas that you wouldn't consider to be neighborhoods. So if you're talking about a small business district or something, that doesn't really get encapsulated in this. But I think the Plan Commission also had some concern about sort of, the barriers that you create when you identify and say, oh, this neighborhood over here versus that neighborhood over there. So I think they're concerned just that we're treating folks fairly, not sort of segregating them into different neighborhoods and making plans for those in particular. So we're, as Andrea mentioned, we're having study sessions with the Plan Commission, and so we're gonna be ironing out some of those issues. But as it stands, the big move is as written here, but that's a work in progress.
And we did hear back from our constituents saying that, yes, they would like neighborhood plans. So it's something that we're really going to give a lot of thought to, and hopefully we can satisfy both the public as well as some of the Plan Commission's concerns on that. Yes, go ahead.
So when I was looking at what you presented initially, one of those maybe big moves is that the city's going to be a series of connected neighborhoods. What does that mean?
Sure. Yeah. So there are certain areas of town that don't feel connected to the rest of town. In particular, areas that are sort of separated by mostly it's state routes. So like University Avenue and Cunningham Avenue, those kind of create barriers. So, you know, you have a neighborhood, say on the north side of University Avenue, it's not very well connected to, say, downtown, even though downtown is right there. So really just creating better connections between neighborhoods is kind of the goal going forward.
So when you say connected, it really does mean like a physical connection where people can walk across that and flow easily. Doesn't mean like a sense of community beyond that neighborhood's identity. So the reason I'm asking that is because then in this, you're talking about plan by neighborhood, plan by plan. And so that would have implications for the connected neighborhoods unless it's just letting people move between neighborhoods more easily.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's just making physical connections. It is wanting to make more of those social connections as well. So I think that's a good point.
But I think the physical connections tie into making people more part of the community as a whole. You know, if there are barriers to being in other areas of the city, you know, then that does impede that connectivity in your social network as well.
When I read these, it sounds really, really good. And so I think, well, that sounds great. How would that actually happen? Or what kind of decisions would be supported by connected neighborhoods? So that's what I'm trying to think about. What would that actually be? I mean, what kind of decisions would actually be supported by
So
that
we
objective?
didn't include the metrics in here, and if you have, I don't know if you've had an opportunity to go online and see the plan, but the metrics really show how we're going to make that happen. You know, we have the action items, but yeah, how do we track that? What are we going to do to make that happen? So I think looking at that would maybe give you a better idea. We have PDFs of the plan here too. If you'd like to have a PDF, sometimes that's easy to flip through and write notes and things and give us feedback as well. So
Yeah, okay.
I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
And if that doesn't answer your question, then please, contact us and we can go into more detail.
That would help, I think, in terms of making the more general comments at the beginning more understandable. Like, what does that really mean that we're going to be doing?
Right. Like I said, if that doesn't answer your question, please let us know and we'll do that. And then that just helps us in feedback in the plan in general. If you have those questions and we're not answering them, we need to work on the text to make sure that that's explained better. So appreciate that.
Is that,
ahead.
I
I'm sorry.
hate interrupting your flow here too.
No,
but
no, not at all.
You mentioned that there are PDFs, and those are something we can get from you.
Yes, I've got them right on the back table back here as well, and we'll make sure you get that. I can send them in the mail to you too. Cameron or Nick, I can send you the PDF if you want to send them out to the commission. We can do that as well.
Sure.
That'd be fine. It's been a while since I looked at that, but a couple of the questions along the line of what Ann was asking. I know that one of the big moves is with regard to a walkable Urbana. Now, by that, do you mean walkable to transportation or walkable to destination? Because one of the things I just sat through some lovely presentations a few weeks ago about some of the things that are being done with tiny homes and so forth, and they're modeled on North Carolina plans, but the weather in North Carolina is not the same in February as the weather in Illinois. So walkable has a tendency to get nasty for about a third of the year here. Long question, but what is that kind of geared towards?
Yeah, I mean, in general, walkability is being able to get to most of your daily needs within, say, a 15 or 20-minute walk. Like that's just kind of a general definition for it. But obviously things are spread out, so you're not going to be able to get to everything within 15 to 20-minute walk. So if you can't do that, then you would need to have walkable transit access as well. So you need to be able to get to, the idea, and that kind of ties back to the concept of connected neighborhoods. You need to be able to meet your daily needs without necessarily having a car, and being able to meet it in a reasonable time. Getting on the bus and being on there for 2 hours in the day isn't really feasible, and that's not what we're going for.
Well, it also has a tendency sometimes to bump up against visitability. Walkable is fine, provided you can walk. The elderly, who are not going to do 15, 20-minute walks and carry their groceries home anyway, and even families with a lot of children. Not fun trying to shepherd 4 or 5 children while you're doing that walk. So I'm hoping all of those things are all encompassed in that, where we aren't helping this and isolating that.
If you look at the little moves for walkability, it covers things even like sidewalks. We talk about, sidewalks maybe being in disrepair, but there are areas in the community that don't have any sidewalks.
Right.
So it's those things are all covered in those little moves. So it's not just the ability to be connected and walk, but it's the actual infrastructure that's necessary as well, or the other tools.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you make some good points there, and it doesn't make sense. Say we have a big senior housing development that somebody wants to put somewhere. If we're allowing that in some place that's not close to transit or really close to the things they need to get to, because a lot of seniors can still walk, they just can't walk 20 minutes to the store or something like that. So I think just keeping that in mind is going to be key.
Good, but seniors in senior developments, that's usually pretty well planned. I'm talking more about seniors in their own residences that are pretty isolated to begin with, and what part of the program helps them out would be a question that would be there to me.
Okay.
I know you can't cover everything, but I think the more inclusive a plan seems, the less people will be searching for the exclusions that always cause a problem.
We had, early on in the process, we traveled with someone that was in a wheelchair, and how they went to the grocery store, how they went to church, how they went to Lincoln Square Mall. And it's a real eye-opener when you really feel like our community we think it's pretty accessible, and maybe it is in comparison to other communities. But the route that was taken from Edge of Mall to Schnucks, went across parking lots, busy roads. I learned that when you roll through, when a sewer or the gutter grate is full of leaves and everything, that rolls with the wheelchair. And coming to an intersection and seeing that the other 3 corners don't have accessible sidewalks. So there's things like that are real eye-openers, and so that's part of this. The input that we got was, there's people that can't traverse the city as well as we would hope that they can. So again, it takes resources, but we're definitely aware. I'm going to move to 10, which was encourage communities' health, safety, and well-being, and I thought that was something that this group would be concerned with. Ensuring resources are available to support a community that feels safe, employing industry-specific standards to confirm the adequacy of public safety resources, providing opportunities for social interaction, support networks, and community engagement. And I think this goes to you, Ms. Silvas, talking about that connected neighborhood, that this is more than that. It's really feeling a part of your community. Prioritizing equitable access to essential resources such as education, employment opportunities, housing, health care, transportation, and recreational facilities. developing a plan to address food deserts and ensure every resident has access to healthy food. This is something that's one of the council goals as well, or has been, and so you'll see a lot of the same themes. And then encouraging crime prevention through environmental design principles for private development. So those are just some of the things that would fall into big move number 10. So just to give you some idea of what we're doing to roll out the plan, I mentioned that we mailed postcards. They talked about the where people could go for the community meetings, and we just wrapped those up this past week. We did the information release that you should have been part of, or were part of. We sent it to all the commissions. That was on the 20th of August. We've been in advertising in Smile Politely. Smile Politely did a nice editorial, and I'd be glad to send the link to this committee, or this commission, because they did a nice summary for us, and I've talked with them since then to get some additional feedback from them. We've done print advertising in the News Gazette. Some like print ads, some go digital, so we've also done the digital advertising. We did flyers that the council members were sent to their constituents, and just trying to be out and about wherever we can, talking about the plan and making sure that people have opportunities to give us feedback. So these were the 6 places that we held meetings. We've had I think attendance at all but one of those. We did not have attendance at the Tiger Academy. And that was the only one where we didn't have feedback. But most of them, I think we've gotten a total of around 40 comment cards filled out, or comments filled out on our comment cards. You can see them out here in the lobby of the City Hall too. We've got a comment box if anybody wants to add comments or look at the items that we have out there. The review timeline, I mentioned the Plan Commission is going to be reviewing it. This is all tentative. This would be probably the best case scenario if everything happened according to the schedule, but it may take longer, and if it needs more time, we're willing to do that. So the Plan Commission review is going on, the neighborhood meetings we had, the commissions, this is our 3rd commission meeting. We still have Sustainability Advisory Commission, and we're going to add historical preservation to this too, and I'm sorry I didn't have that on here. And then it'll eventually be recommended by the Plan Commission to City Council Committee of the Whole, and then adopted by Council. There may be more Committee of the Whole discussions. This is just, I put one on here. There may be more of those, and there may be more Plan Commission study sessions. So the plan draft, that's the website is on here. We're probably going to keep that open, I would say probably for another 30 to 60 days for comments. So please encourage people to still go online, or provide us feedback on the Imagine Urbana website as well. And then Kevin is going to talk a little bit more about the master maps, which if people went on early, those maps weren't on there. And now we've got some pretty extensive maps, and I'll let Kevin go through that.
Well, yeah, just very briefly. So the idea of having this sort of master map is just to guide sort of the development for the city for the next 20 years. But that includes things like the future land use, different street connections, bike connections, pedestrian connections, things like that. So I'm not going to go into it right now, but you can go to the link, and also if you go into the Imagine Urbana draft plan, there's a link in there, so you can get to those maps. You can go on there, you can make comments about that as well. So, but it's essentially going to be used as a tool both for planners and for plan commissioners, but hopefully I'll be able to develop some tools for just the general public, so they can go on and sort of see what the plans are for, for the future. There we go.
Well, I
You can just click it once when there's the hand. Yeah.
I have a general question about businesses. So, and again, I don't really know how this works in the city. If some business wanted to move into downtown Urbana, there's a whole process for that. And would this plan sort of encourage certain kinds of businesses to move to downtown that would be more community facing? Because I remember in San Francisco, there was a cool place called Brainwash, and it was a combination bookstore laundromat. And it was the kind of place, you're gonna hang out there for hours, might as well have a cool coffee shop bookstore thing. So it's like, so things like that were just a private business, but they were contributing to a cool neighborhood community feel. And so how much impact would this plan have on that sort of thing?
I don't think this plan would have too much impact on it. So the way that the future land uses are described are sort of just generally describing the type of neighborhood you would want to see. What really gets into the details of what type of business is allowed in a certain area is the zoning ordinance. So really, and I guess I made a note to mention this, but really, sort of the way the comprehensive plan works is it's our policy document, and it says, here's what we want to see, but then we actually have to implement it, and to do that, we have to do things like change our zoning ordinance to line up with this, or change our land development code to line up with what the plan says. So really, the zoning ordinance is where we would get into that detail. I wouldn't want to so I think our current zoning ordinance, without getting too much into the weeds, our current zoning ordinance is way too restrictive in many ways about what type of uses you can do here versus there. Downtown, you can pretty much do most any type of business you would want. So if somebody wanted to do a combination bookstore laundromat today or tomorrow, they could do that. But thanks for the question.
I'm thinking back to the fact that you didn't get anybody at the meeting you held at the Tiger Academy, and I'm wondering if there was any effort, or will there be any effort, to engage young people, like all the seniors at Urbana High School, or something that really helps those future residents of Urbana feel connected to the future, and that they have a say.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that they could have participated in any of these other meetings, but sometimes it's easier for them to participate as a group.
We did, as far as our initial community engagement, we did do outreach with the students. We did Dream Academy. We had Urbana High School involved. We did a lot of youth outreach. For this part, after we've drafted the plan, there have not been specific, targeted efforts to ask them. We just made sure that we hit all the households, and we wanted their feedback to look at the plan and see if we got it right. But we did get their feedback early on. But you're right, we did not have anything specific other than, like I said, we had the location at Tiger Academy. But good point to take.
I would just add to that, it seemed like a good amount of your outreach for things is through the News Gazette. That I noticed on there, you had different things that had been used in the News Gazette as what seemed like an outreach tool. The News Gazette is going to miss about 60% of the residents of Urbana.
Absolutely.
Barely hit the other 40. So,
Yep.
I mean, for
Yep.
people, and that would be anybody under 45. That's not.
And that's why we sent the postcard, and hopefully all of you received one. We sent that to 21,605 households, and those went out the middle of August to announce these different, announce the website. But you're right, people have various vehicles that they use for their media.
It depends. I don't know if you need to do, I don't know how much more outreach you need to do, want to do, how you want to connect with people. But if so, you might want to talk to some different media people about that. I mean,
Yeah,
I read what comes in the mail. That also doesn't happen with a lot of people. The same people who don't read the News Gazette are not reading their mail either.
yeah.
There is
And
a
early
niche
on-
for Smile Politely, but again, it's not everyone in Urbana.
Yeah.
I was just going to say two questions similar to Chris there, in the sense of, I wanted to know if there's like any tangible kind of results from the postcards, first off, but then in addition to, getting the messaging out and whatnot, we can't lose sight of like what the primary resource right now. Like everyone's in their phone 90% of the time, you know what I mean? And I mean, if I have to imagine sending 22,000 postcards was costly, you know what I mean? But, probably a fraction of that put that into Facebook, social media type ads and whatnot, and
And we did do that.
Okay.
Yeah, we were on Facebook, all the city's social media tools. We did outreach through that as well. But you're right.
but like the paid ads and things of that nature.
We did. Yeah, we did paid advertising as well.
No TikTok dancing, though.
Listen, we can make it happen. Though. We can make it happen.
Well,
Let's get in front of them, man.
it might be a sad thing, it might not be a sad thing, but through real estate marketing or other things, I work with coaching people around the country, and Facebook is pretty well dead too for most marketing when it comes to that.
For young people, it certainly is.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
It's only people my age, I think,
That's
that
why
use
Kevin
it.
and I were joking about TikTok. We got to get to the dance moves together. Make this happen.
It's amazing what you can get out of 8 seconds on TikTok that you can't get out of all the stuff you want to put on Facebook this month.
That's right.
So, yeah.
But Deshaun, to your, I think the initial part of your question, you asked if there were any tangible outcomes from these postcards. Not yet, because we're still collecting all the comments from everybody on the plan. So once we, we'll read all those comments. I know Andrea has compiled them all. We're trying to sort through them and make sense of them, and then respond to those, and hopefully those make the plan better. So that'll be the tangible
And
things.
what
yeah.
we're hearing from when we go to the public sessions, I'll ask people, have you had an opportunity to look at the plan? And they go, oh yeah, I received a postcard. So we're hearing that was at least a mechanism that there's some continuity there, that they've heard about it before they saw the meeting notices. So we're really just trying to get the word out. And early on, we used a lot of different mechanisms to get the outreach, to get that feedback that made the plan. And now we want people to read the plan and see, again, if we got it right. So spread the word and tell your friends and neighbors to look it up if they can. And we'll provide hard copies, PDFs to anybody that wants one. They're in the city clerk's office as well as the public library as well.
Do you have any sense of what the demographics or locations are of the people who have participated at the meetings, or?
If you look at our previous reports, you can see those. This one we do not. We don't have that data yet, but any of the feedback that we've had in those two reports, the Community Outreach Report and Balancing Act, it'll show some of that demographic data.
So did you get pretty good participation across the city and across the different income levels? And
We went out and we're in, again, I don't have the reports right in front of me to go through, but we were in just about every neighborhood. We really felt like there were voices that required us to be in those neighborhoods and to feel like, I mentioned probably our best, I guess the best feedback we were able to get was when we participated in events that were in those neighborhoods that they felt comfortable going to. And all of that is detailed in the community outreach report we did, where we were, what neighborhoods we were in, which ones we did door to door, the different mechanisms we used, all the events we attended.
So I hope that resulted in actual, that was the outreach, and then you wonder how much response you got from that. So I hope that resulted in a nice broad response.
Yeah, we were pleased with the feedback we got. Some people, though, a lot of people don't want to talk to us at first, whether it's just apathy or mistrust or, I don't have time. There's a lot of that. But when the door-to-door was probably the most revealing, is when people then felt like, oh, wow, you're not here to fine me on something or reprimand me for my yard. Anyway, it was rewarding to be out there. Most people are very positive about the community, and when we were doing outreach, there were a lot of things going on in the cities that was maybe not as positive, but the neighborhoods, they still are very happy to be living where they are and upbeat about their community. So it was nice to hear. And again, please just pass the word. We don't have any more scheduled community meetings, but if there's some place that you feel like we could outreach to, we'd be glad to make a presentation and talk in a little more detail.
Any more questions for? They're here in front of us.
One last question, which is that U of I owns Willard Airport, which is a rare kind of arrangement, but is having and I've heard people say, oh, if we had a real airport, we could attract any more people to live here, and if I had a flight to DC directly, that'd be so much better. So a really great boost to our community would be to have a really much bigger airport. Did that come up at all as a thing?
It's funny, that really wasn't a big, most people, it was things that were closer to home, things that impacted them directly. And we hear that a lot in economic development, however, when we're talking about recruiting companies, things of that nature, that comes up more. But from just the, I don't want to say average citizen, but the regular guy, that's really doesn't come up on their radar much. There's many more things that come ahead of that. Not that it isn't a concern for our community, though.
I'd also say there's probably plenty of stuff for us to do and focus our efforts on over the next 20 years. So if that happens, great. But we're not going to spend our time trying to push that.
But there are people that are. I mean, the Economic Development Corporation is trying very hard to attract additional airline service and get some direct flights out of Willard Airport. So there are people that are focused on that. And contact us at any time. Our emails are very public, and call us, email us, whatever. We'd love your feedback.
Thank you very much. Thanks for
All
the
right, thanks
extra
for having
info.
us.
Thank you.
And your time explaining to us. That takes us to the staff report.
Sure. Just a couple quick updates on our housing rehabilitation programs. I think we've probably mentioned previously, we have a roof repair program that was funded through ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act. Based on the initial funding agreement, we'd expected those funds to kind of go away at the end of the program year if they hadn't been used up. We were able to extend that until the beginning of 2026. So we're going to continue trying to get the word out in the community about that program and use up those funds. Looking over our numbers on that program's performance, we really were able to fairly accurately predict how many activities we were going to do. They just actually ended up coming in a bit lower in terms of the cost per project, which is why we still have funds left over. So, definitely feel free to share that information in your networks, that those programs are still available. On that note, Cameron's been doing a great job since he came on earlier this year as our community development specialist, and one of the things he's really been helping with is trying to get the word out in the community at our programs. He's been hitting up all the bulletin boards in town, so definitely if any of you all know about a place in town where we should be putting up a flyer, feel free to share that information with us, and we want to make sure everybody in the community who might benefit from these programs knows about them.
Just to quickly add to that, we want to advertise that we have funding for roof repairs, not that you can charge more when you're doing roof repairs. That's not what we want. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. Any questions on the staff report? Thank you, Nick and Cameron. Okay, is there any unfinished business to come before the commission this evening?
There's not.
Any new business?
Nope.
Okay. Having exhausted our agenda, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.